Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Honestly, Let's Talk. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you a variety of topics to share with some people that I greatly respect and admire, to just talk through and have these conversations that we aren't always making the time to have. I am so excited to talk with my guests today about Islam and being Muslim. And I'm so thrilled that they have come on to share their own personal journeys with us today. As with every conversation, I always like to remind anybody listening or watching that my guests today will be sharing their own personal journeys and experiences. They do not speak for everybody who is Islamic. So please do not think that their answers are the end all be all. This is the start of a conversation for you to hopefully learn some new things, experience more personal stories shared, and then you can go out and continue your learning and be even better for the people you surround yourself with. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking so much, and I'm going to let each of my guests kind of introduce themselves. So Sim, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Todd, for having me. Dr. Sosan Jaber. I am currently in Illinois in my 21st year of teaching. I've done a variety of different things, from being in the classroom to being in administration, both here and abroad. And now I'm trying to really focus a lot of my effort and a lot of my work on equity work in schools, and do some of my some consulting and kind of work with schools to build equity models that are specific to their schools.
Umar?
Yeah, thank you everyone, and I'm Umar Hussain. I'm doing currently my PhD at Texas A&M, and my area of research is basically inclusion of Muslim women in sport and physical activities. And my lot of research is done in subcontinent region. And basically, I'm from Pakistan. I came here in 2018, and I have worked back in Pakistan for social advocacy, for social development, and women rights for last 8 years. So that's my area of interest.
Awesome. Anissa?
Hi, I'm Anissa Kanwala. I teach 6th grade math in a public school district, and this is my 10th year teaching. I've been wearing hijab since I was a senior in high school, so it's been an interesting journey.
And Nida?
Hi, I'm Dr. Nida Saeed. I am a teacher in Houston. I've been teaching for 10 years. I do have my PhD in educational leadership. I have taught on an administrative level. I've taught pre-K through 12th grade. I've had experiences in all secondary and elementary. I was a digital coach for a little while, but right now I currently teach 4th grade in Houston in the Sugar Land area. And so I'm super excited to be here and share my journey with y'all.
Well, and I am so excited. And I know our other guest will be here in just a minute. I just messaged her and she said, I'm trying to log on. So she is coming. And so she'll be here. And I think she is here. Yes, she is. Thank you so much. And guess what? It's your turn to introduce yourself.
Assalamualaikum. Hi, everyone. My name is Asma Shah from Michigan. I'm currently a 4th grade educator.
Thank you, Esmahan, for being here. I'm so excited to have you joining in too. So I'm really interested to talk about this today because, you know, we did a conversation recently on Honestly Let's Talk about Christianity. And it was such a powerful conversation for me just to have that talk about something that was really personal to each of the guests that were there. And when I started thinking about continuing these conversations, I knew I wanted to continue to have it and talk about some of the other religions out there. And Islam was the first one that came to mind because that's a religion that I feel like is often misunderstood or misconstrued to the public at large for a variety of reasons today. But what I'd love to start with in doing this conversation is I'd love to know, and I'll bop around between y'all, but I want to know, just start with kind of, when did Islam become personal for you? And for your own mind, what does it mean for you to be part of that community? And so, Nida, we'll start with you.
Sure. So growing up, my family and I, we were very conservative in our religious beliefs. My parents didn't force it on us. When my parents did move here to the United States, they wanted to make sure we were holding on to our beliefs, that we still knew our roots and we understood where we came from. So we were taken to different various parts of our religion, introduced to it. When I became a high school freshman is where I actually understood the concept of wearing the hijab and understood what Islam means to me. and how I need to practice it. And so a lot of it was how my parents raised me, and then I kind of carried it over, and I just kind of balanced my faith and being able to take it with me wherever I am.
Thank you. Sosan?
I would say for like, and I think most Muslims would echo that, like, it's a way of life and it's a part of everything that we do. And you're kind of raised on that from very early on, like everything from, praying 5 times a day to your modest dress, to wearing your hijab, to family ties and family relationships, and having a certain level of established family relationships and being a part of a community and going to the mosque. And like for us, my parents, like Nida said, were very, very intent on, and I think that's not something that's unique to people who come from different countries, and especially if they're leaving because they've been displaced from their countries, it's really, really important for them to hold on to both religion and culture. And so we grew up in a very religious and cultural home here in America, and my parents moved from New York to New Jersey when we were children just to enroll us in Islamic schooling and ensure that we had a community that would help support our religious development and growth. And so for us, it's been something like, I think Anissa said she covered when she was in high school. We covered, as soon as I think I turned 9 or 10, I covered. We fasted every Ramadan. Ramadan was like every day we went to the mosque, and it wasn't just in Ramadan, but we congregated, we ate with people, and it was a part of every fabric of our being, on a daily basis, on a yearly. It was everything.
Umar, what about you?
So for me, like as for others as well, I belong to a very religious family. I was grown up in Pakistan, so that's a very religious country. So that's why from my childhood, religion was part of my life. But when I grew up, when I was in my 20s, I traveled across to many other countries and met with very diverse groups. And at that was the time I started to question my beliefs, that what Islam means to me, what Prophet means to me, what different concepts mean to me, what Islamic laws means to me. So I tried to understand more and try to read more about Islam and its roots of Islam, and how Islam grown up and how it is part of my life and how it has affected me. So because of being part of different diverse group with very divergent point of view about Islam, because I've been traveling with people who has a Jew background, I've been traveling with people with LGBTQ as well, so they have their own beliefs about Islam. So that has really helped me a lot to understand Islam from different other point of views as well, and then my own understanding of what Islam is, what Allah is, what Prophet Muhammad is, and what are the rule of lives according to Islam is. So that has really affected me for last 4 to 5 years, and that has been also part of my research as well, because I'm using Islam and Muslim woman and trying to intersect that in sports. So that has really affected me for last 4 or 5 years more.
Well, and something you shared there, Umar, that I love is that, it, and the other ladies here have shared it too. There's so many different paths that we take, and even when we are all reading the same scripture, we each interpret it differently, and we each internalize it differently, and we don't always get to the same place at the same time. Sometimes it takes some of us, and so I love that y'all share that too. Anissa, what about you?
Like Nida and Susan said, it's like a part of our bringing up. At least it was for me. I moved here when I was 4 with my parents, and a lot of it was culture more than religion. They tend to go hand in hand, especially if you're coming from not from America. It just seems to be very culturally based. So when I was growing up, I was confused by, is this like a Muslim thing? Is it like very Islamic that this is what I'm supposed to do? Or is it like an Indian, Pakistani, like Kenyan thing? So growing up, it was kind of hard to differentiate the two. So I did go to Sunday school or Saturday school, depending. And so that helped kind of build the foundation of where I was. And then I used to kind of go to lectures and listen to different things from different speakers to help build my own knowledge. But a lot of it was cultural from what my parents knew and what they were around and surrounding themselves with. I got really close to Islam where I was trying to be way more consistent after my dad passed away, and it became like the front and center of everything. I was like it hits you in a completely different way having a loss like that. And so that's when I was way more consistent, way more paying attention to what's happening to the world around me. I tried to read Quran way more than I ever had before, because who knew what the next day would bring.
Right.
And so that was definitely what kind of cemented the journey that yes, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be.
You know, it's funny that you shared that it was through the loss of a family member that made things more real or more personal or made you take them more seriously. Because, you know, in my own personal journey with my faith, it's the same thing. It's like those kind of things that rock you to your core make you readdress and reevaluate. So thank you for sharing that. Esmahan, what about you?
So, as the rest of the ladies and Umar have said that, so I'm Yemeni American, so it's very ingrained in our culture. Religion and culture go hand in hand. And as Anissa said, like growing up, I had a hard time differentiating: is this culture, is this religion? And just through Sunday school or Saturday school, we were taught the difference between religion and culture. But I didn't really like fall in love with my religion until I was in my 20s and I could understand it for myself rather than asking my parents what's this and what's that. Because a lot of times my dad is old school and he'd be like, because, and that was the end of the explanation. So it was nice to really dig deep and look at lectures, go to different events and try to understand the religion from a personal perspective without having like an influence of somebody around me trying to give me that like understanding of what it was. And then I have to also say, like, when you have a partner in your life that's also on the same journey as you are, it makes it very easy for you to like, you know, research together, pray together, understand your faith together, look for community outlets together, which was so beneficial for me because I thank God that He put my partner in my life for me to be able to become closer to Him. So that was a huge influence. And I would say recently, within the last 5 years, I became even more enveloped in my faith. Alhamdulillah, I was able to go to Hajj, go to Umrah with my kids. So that was a blessing in and of itself. So really, within my last 10 years, that's when I started to develop a stronger relationship with my faith.
You know, I loved all of your stories so much. And, you know, I have been learning more and more about the Muslim faith lately and Islam. And even hearing y'all talk today, there's certain words that I hear and I'm like, ooh, I haven't heard that one before. I need to go educate myself over what that means. And so that's what I think is so important for those who are listening or watching is that that's what's great about learning this is that you are going to have kids that you don't always know what faiths they are having at home or what faiths they're going to grow into as they get older. And you being as educated as possible as you interact with others around this world is why this is important. But, you know, what I would say is the Muslim faith is one of, you know, here in the States, it is very not always treated as respectfully as some of the other faiths. And I know that you four women here are all wearing hijabs. And I know that that already puts a spotlight on you every time you enter a room. People already have assumptions. I know that people already have assumptions with the way we look, period. But when we dress a certain way, people think about, you know, and Anissa and Nida and I, we've had this conversation about, you know, during times where people have made assumptions at the grocery store or called me this or that or things like that. So I know you've all dealt with your own form of microaggressions or macroaggressions when it comes to this. What's an experience that really sticks with you about a time when you were treated that way or that your faith was misunderstood? And we'll start with you, Umar.
Okay, for me, one of the instances which really affected me was once I was in Colombo with a group of like people from Czech Republic and Germany, and we were on a beach in nearby Colombo, and there was a Muslim man and a woman. A woman was covered, and Muslim man was with him and walking on the beach. And one of my friends, and he's a very good friend of mine, said that, Do you see that you are treating this woman as a dog?" I said that I do not treat woman as a dog. See that you can see that her husband might be treating her as a dog. So look like how he's treating. I said that it is their belief and we have to respect that. So that instance really affected me. Other than that, there are many microaggressions. When you come to US, there you from the airport to every other step, you feel a lot of microaggression and you face it. For instance, when I was in class, that was my first class, and I really respect that professor as well, and he's a very good professor. When he took attendance and he took my name, Umar Hussain, and because he had my picture, and I said, yes, I'm Umar Hussain. I said, yes, I'm present. So for a moment he said that, Umar, oh, I got surprised that you are like this. I was surprised to see you, and I was afraid. So everyone was quiet in the room. It was a, you can say, implicit bias, not an explicit bias, but these are type of macroaggressions which you can see. But that does not mean that everyone in the West or and everyone across the globe are bad, because I've seen, because for instance, my professor, he is from America, and he is a white American, and he's one of the best person I know in this world. So I have met many good people in the West, in the US, from across the globe. So we cannot, you can say, generalize, but
Right.
yeah, there is a lot of you can say bias, implicit bias against Islam and people of the East generally. So that many of Muslims might have, and all of these participants might have faced as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is you don't ever want to generalize about any group because there's always people within that group that are different. What about you, Anissa?
I think I said this earlier. I don't know if it's like the naive part of me or I just don't try to pay attention to that stuff. I've never had a super in your face, oh my God, you suck kind of moment. But I have had the moments where I've had coworkers come up to me and they're like, wow, I didn't realize you would be this way. I expected you to be quieter. I expected you to wear all black all the time. I expected you to like not speak up or not interact with kids. I was afraid that you weren't going to be a good teacher. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how does that go hand in hand with who I am as a person? So I think that conversation was very eye-opening that, oh, people look at me different. And then another one is like, if I'm at the airport and I need to pray, like the amount of anxiety coursing through my body in that moment is probably one of like, and half of it's just me, and like everyone here has probably had to do wudu, which is like the cleansing in public, I'm sure. So half of it's like, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna be like, why are you washing your feet right now? Like it's all of that. Like everyone, I'm sure, is in caught. So the weird looks and the like having your, so you've had to talk to the flight attendant, like, hey, is it okay if I just pray here in the corner? And looking around to make sure that nobody's staring at you weird. And so it's little things like that that get me on a daily. And then always like, where are you from? But no, really. And I'm like, why does that matter? Like here, I'm from here.
Yeah.
And that's enough for you.
Well, I've got to say, Anissa, I'm shocked that you're in a black hijab because I know you love your colorful one, and I just knew tonight you were gonna have like this beautiful, extravagant, like brightly colored one, and you came with black, and I'm like,
I had to tone it down for the earrings. I had to tone it down so I could like show off the color on my earrings.
I love that. I love that. Well, so Esmahan, what about you? What experiences have you had?
I've had a multitude of experiences where it's micro or macro. It ranges really because of the city that I'm in. And I came from Yemen when I was 5 as well. But the city that we ended up living in, it's a majority of Muslims here. So I never really realized like anything was like off or anything was different until after 9/11. And then shit hit the fan then, you know, excuse my language. And then that's when I started, like, as soon as we left the borders of the city, you would start getting these, speak, you know, English. And I'm like, I am speaking English. Like, I don't understand what the issue is. Or, you know, where are you from? Like Anissa said, or why do you wear that on your head? Like little, do you have hair under there? Like little, like no common sense questions that you would get randomly. But I do have to say, Anissa, I had a similar experience at the airport where I did have to kind of go around the corner to pray. And I was having like, oh my God, who's watching me kind of moment. But yeah, they range from experience. You just kind of take it and move on. I've never had, alhamdulillah, I've never had something severe where it shook me to my core or I was worried about my safety. But I also put myself in positions where I don't have to worry about my safety. Like if I know I'm traveling somewhere, I'm always traveling with somebody that I know is a safe person, mostly my husband or a brother or, you know, a person that I could count on. So really, we just have to kind of look for ways to make sure that we're providing a great representation of our faith while we're out in public, but also putting ourselves in positions where we're not going to be compromised because of some idiot who, heard something on the fly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Nida, what about you?
Well, I've had a couple of instances where I've dealt with that. I think one of the most major ones that kind of stuck with me my entire life has been when I first initially started wearing the hijab. I was in high school, and it was right after 9/11, and it was just an environment where I was not in a diverse society at my high school. I was only, my sister and I, amongst a few other, were probably the only Muslim people on campus. So it's more of like a bullying kind of concept. And that actually led me into education, because I did at that point reach out to teachers and administrators, but a lot of them just kind of turned away and didn't really acknowledge that kind of behavior or put an end to it. And so at that moment, I remember sitting in the car with my mom, and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. And hopefully one day, if I see these things happening around campus, and hopefully not, I'm going to put a stop to it and bring more cultural awareness into the classroom, into the campus, because it's so important to bring that. And a lot of time people, I've kind of realized a lot of people, when they do stuff like that, I'm hoping it's because they're scared and they don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that once you educate people, you educate society, they're able to understand who you are. And so that was probably the biggest traumatizing incident that I did in kind of endure. And it got to a point where, they're spitting on my locker, spitting on me. And it was like a safety issue. Yeah. And it's interesting because I started working on the campus after I became a teacher. I got hired on that campus. And so I did share my story with my students, and a lot has changed. The district that I work with is a lot more diverse, but back then, a very long time ago, there weren't a lot of Muslims where we live. And so that was an incident I did deal with. And there are other incidents as well where I feel like within my own culture, within my own community, I sometimes feel like I do get judged for wearing the hijab. And so it's not just people who are not Muslims, it's people who are Muslims. And it happens everywhere.
And that's such an interesting thing to hear. And I'm glad you shared that. So thank you for sharing that story, Nida. Sosan, what about you?
So I think that anti-Islamic sentiment started way before 9/11, and I think that 9/11 really normalized it in a lot of ways. But I have to say that I think that even like I was in New York and in New Jersey during the time of 9/11 happened, and I don't think that the anti-Islamic sentiment then was as bad as it is now, with kind of the rhetoric that's coming with the anti-Muslim ban and coming from higher up, that's normalized and made acting on and feeling that sentiment more acceptable. So when I'm listening to these stories, I'm like, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. I think we can all relate to a lot of these different stories. And if it really amounts to choosing one experience to share, I think I've told the story a million times, but I'll tell it a million more times, because I feel like where it was coming from was probably the most damaging, because I taught in a historically homogenous Caucasian school district for a long time. I was the only brown, non-white person in the district of 6 schools and employees everywhere. And they had a 611% growth of Arab and Muslim kids because a mosque opened in the area in a 6-year period. And so there's a large population of students that look like me in the district, but very little done to make sure that they were understanding the religion and the culture and being really culturally responsive to those students. And so there was an ISIS bombing in France. And I was teaching my first period class, and I had a teacher colleague come into my class as I was teaching and interrupt my class to ask me how I felt after what my people did in France. And to her, my scarf was a symbol of I was a terrorist. That's what she saw when she looked at my scarf. And so my immediate thought was, if this is what she is seeing when she looks at me, then how is this being projected on every child who looks like me in her classroom? And how is that coming off? And I don't think that's a microaggression, because I feel like that was really life-changing for me. It was super hurtful. I was shocked. I didn't even know how to respond to her because she just caught me off guard. And there was a room full of kids in the class there that not only is she having this conversation as an educator and as an adult who really should know better, but doesn't, but she's also projecting this out there in front of a whole bunch of students that I am standing in front of and I'm supposed to be working with on a daily basis. And I know that in that community and in that context, what she did was she called out the elephant in the room. And so there was a much bigger problem, and that was just a microcosm of a much bigger problem. So yeah, and I think that is something that I carry with me all throughout. Like, I feel like I'm living in Illinois. I feel like the anti-Islamic sentiment here in Illinois is probably worse than it was in New York. I think there's a lot more diversity in New York. There's a lot more segregation here in communities just by the way things are set up. And so I feel like I have two daughters, one is 13 and one is 22. My daughter, the 22-year-old, was, she was there for 9/11. That was part of her childhood experience. But my 13-year-old is getting more and more of that anti-Islamic sentiment and the bullying and everything else than her older sister did. And I feel like it's a hindrance to my career even. I feel like people see my scarf and they can't imagine me being in an administrative role or doing certain types of things. And so even when I walk into a professional space and I am an expert in a lot of areas that I'm talking about, I feel like I'm constantly having to work that much harder than other people just to prove myself because of my brown skin and my headscarf, that mean two different things, and that people can't often differentiate between being Arab and being Muslim. They just mix it all up together, and to them, those are one and the same. So the challenges are very layered, I think.
Well, and I think you made so many good points in there about things that people can think about as we go through this, because, there's so many, like you said, it's so layered. It's not just an easy cut or dry. If this would happen, that would happen. Or if they knew this, then that would fix this. It's like, there's so much that needs to go into all of us to making sure that we truly get to know people. And we don't let an image or a national story or the latest tweet that went out just define a group of people for us. That we should all be better than that. And I want to end with this question, and I'm going to throw this to y'all. I didn't plan this ahead of time, but as you're talking, I thought this would be a great way to end this. I would love, as we wrap this conversation up, for each one of you to introduce a word that the people listening who are not of the Islamic faith may not know, that you can teach them about and what it is and what it means, so they can all leave today not only hearing your stories, but also being a little more educated about the faith as well. So let's start with Anissa.
Okay, good, because I was trying to think of all the words. So my favorite that I use all the time is inshallah, which is like God willing. So there's a joke behind this, but like we say it all the time, be like, yeah, we'll do it eventually. Like, inshallah, it'll get done. But it does mean, like, God willing, that it will happen. So that is definitely one of the words that we use most often. Sometimes in ways that we shouldn't use them, like jokingly, but it is one of the most important words in it is Arabic. It is an Arabic word. So it does mean God willing. Awesome. That it does happen in the future.
You can go next.
I'm going to say Allahu Akbar. And the reason that I chose that one, and what it means is God is great, is because it's often associated with terrorism and something about to explode. And so a lot of my students in my dissertation that I focused on in like talking about their experiences were always being bullied by people throwing things at them and then screaming Allahu Akbar and hiding. And it's such a beautiful word. And we say it when things are great, and we say it sometimes when things are not going so great, because at the end of the day, it's all about God being great and that his power is limitless. And it has nothing to do with violence whatsoever, the way the media has kind of tacked that violence onto that terminology.
Thank you. Umar?
I will go with the word mashallah. That word is basically an Arabic word which teaches us that a thing is very beautiful because Allah has created, or you can say God, Allah, or anything else. You can say him anything, but he is the divine power and he has created this word very beautiful. So mashallah is the word I use, and I use it very a lot as well.
Thank you. Esmahan?
I'm going to say Bismillah. Bismillah means in the name of God, and we usually use it when we are starting something, like when we start a meal, when we're starting a project. I use it when I'm starting on a drive, like going to my dad's house. I turn the car on, like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Like, I always make sure that whatever I start a project or whatever I'm starting something, it's always with the remembrance of God so that it is blessed.
I like that. I haven't heard of that one. And then we'll end with you, Nida.
Well, one of my favorite words that I constantly am thinking about, especially in the time that we're living in, the word is called sabr, which means patience in Arabic. And so that's something that I'm constantly trying to use. And every time I come across something, my mom and I, we all kind of say, let's just have sabr, let's have patience.
I love that.
So,
all of those were beautiful. And so thank you for not only educating my viewers and listeners, but me. I didn't know a lot of those. So it was great getting to learn from that. Well, I have to tell you, this has been a great conversation. And I appreciate you five so much for wanting to come on here and just share your own personal journeys, a piece of your story, and also teach us a few new things along the way. What I would tell all of my listeners or viewers is thank you so much for joining. Go out and continue to educate yourself. Regardless of what your faith is, you are going to be interacting with people who are different than you. So why not take the time to learn as much as you can about as many people as possible and have those uncomfortable conversations, have those talks with your children, with your family, with your friends. And if you don't have anybody in your life that is Muslim, guess what? Now's a perfect time to make your circle a little bit larger and bring somebody in. Because if we don't have these kinds of people in our circles aren't quite large enough and we can be doing better. Thank you so much, you five, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining another Honestly Let's Talk. You can check out this episode as well as any of the past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you want to listen to it, it'll be there. Thank y'all so much for being here, and join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. for a new episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.